There's a moment in war when you stop waiting for orders. Not because you've become brave, not because you've lost discipline, but because something inside you finally understands that the decision has already been made, and it wasn't made for you. If you stay with me, I'm going to take you into that moment. Not from the outside, not from a map, but from inside it, where 300,000 men waited for an order that never came, and slowly realized they had already been left behind. Before we go further, make sure you're subscribed, because stories like this aren't told the way they should be. And once you hear it like this, you won't forget it. I didn't understand it at first. No one does, because in the beginning, everything still makes sense. Orders arrive. Positions hold. Maps still look like they belong to reality, and the men around you, they still believe. We were told Stalingrad mattered, not just as a city, but as something symbolic, something that had to be taken, had to be held, had to be finished. And when you're there, when you're moving forward, when every step looks like progress, you don't question that. You don't stop to ask if the objective still makes sense, because everything around you is still functioning. Bareli, bat, enog. What we didn't see, what no one down there was meant to see, was what was already forming beyond us. Not Charles, not panic. Something much worse. Preparation. Silent. Precise. Patient. While we were fighting for buildings. For streets, for single rooms inside broken factories. They were building something around us. Slowly. Deliberately. And by the time we started to feel it, it was already too late. You don't notice an encirclement when it begins. There's no moment where someone tells you, you're surrounded. It happens in fragments. A unit that stops responding. A supply route that doesn't return. A delay that feels longer than it should. At first, you explained it. Then you question it. And then one day, no. I remember the first time it felt wrong, not dangerous, not chaotic, just and wrong. We were still receiving orders, still moving, still holding, but something in the rhythm had changed, like a machine still running after the system controlling it had already failed. And the strangest part, the orders didn't change. They never do. Hold, advance, maintain position. Words that only make sense when the system behind them is still alive. But ours was already breaking. You could see it in small things. Supplies arriving late, messages repeating themselves, officers saying less and looking more. And then the rumors started. Not loud, not open, just quiet conversations between men who trusted each other enough to say what couldn't be said in front of anyone else. They're building something on the flanks. They're moving at night. They're not where the maps say they are. At first, it sounds like fear. But fear doesn't organize like that. Fear doesn't move in silence. Fear doesn't wait. This was something else. And then it happened. Not gradually, not slowly, all at once. The sky didn't change. The ground didn't shake before it started. It just began. Artillery everywhere. Not scattered fire, not controlled bursts. A wall, a continuous wall of sound that didn't have direction, didn't have rhythm, didn't even feel human. And in that moment, before anyone said it, before any report reached command, before any map was updated, we understood This wasn't an attack. This was the closing of something, and we were inside it. Once that understanding settles in, everything changes. Even if nothing around you harassment. The guns keep firing. The orders keep coming. Men still move from one position to another. But inside, something shifts, because you stop seeing the war as something you're part of, and start seeing it as something that's already happening to you. That first barrage didn't just hit the lines. It assailed them. Not all at once, but fast enough that the idea of a front stopped making sense. We were told the flanks would hold, that the Allied units were in position, that everything was under control. Those words don't mean much when you hear tanks where there shouldn't be tanks, when reports start coming in. Fragmented, incomplete, desperate, and then stop completely. That silence is something you never forget, not because it's quiet, but because of what it replaces. Before, the radio was constant. Orders, updates, movement. Now, it was gaps. Long gaps. And in those gaps, reality starts to form. We didn't need confirmation. We didn't need a map. We could feel it. They had broken through. Not in one place. Everywhere that mattered. And once that happens, everything behind those lines becomes something else. Not defended territory. Not controlled space. Just what's left. Encirclement doesn't feel like a trap at first. There's no wall, no clear boundary. Just a slow realization that every direction you could move leads back into the same problem. We kept receiving orders. That's the part that stays with me. Even after everything had changed, the orders didn't hold. Maintain position. Prepare for counterattack. You hear those words differently when you've already seen what's coming. They stop sounding like commands. They start sounding like delay. Like someone, somewhere, is trying to stretch time. And we were inside that stretch. That's when the conversations changed. No one said, "We're surrounded." No one needed to. Instead, it was questions. Did you hear from them? When was the last supply run? Why hasn't anything come through? Simple questions. But every answer pointed in the same direction. Nothing was coming. Still, we stall. We stall because staying is what soldiers do. You don't abandon position because something feels wrong. You wait. You confirm. You follow until something forces you to do otherwise. But nothing forced us. Not immediately. And that made it worse, because it meant the system was still functioning. Just enough to keep us where we were. Days passed. Maybe weeks. Time doesn't move the same way when everything starts repeating. Cold, hunger, waiting. The cold was the first thing that changed everything. Not the kind of cold you feel on your skin. The kind that settles inside you. That slows you down. That makes every movement feel heavier. That turns simple tasks into effort. And then into struggle. We weren't equipped for it. Not like that. Not for that long. Clothing became stiff. Metal burned your hands. Even breathing felt different. Sharp, dry, constant. And the longer it stayed, the more it became part of everything. Then came the hunger. Not immediate, not dramatic. At first, just less smaller portions, more gaps between meals. You tell yourself it's temporary. That supply will catch up. That it's just a delay. But delays start stacking, and eventually they become reality. Horses were the first to go, not because anyone wanted that, because there was no alternative. And when the horses were gone, we didn't talk about what came next. We just adapted. That's what humans do. We. Adaptación. Even to things we shouldn't. Even to situations that make no sense. Even to the slow realization that survival has replaced everything else. B. Then, the reports had reached command. We knew they had. The numbers were too clear. The situation too obvious. Paulus knew. The officers knew. Everyone who had access to the real information knew exactly what this was becoming. And still. We waited. We waited because the one order that mattered, Adante, come, break out, move, leave, that order never arrived. You might wonder why. Why no one just made the decision. Why no one moved anyway. But you have to understand something. From the outside, it looks simple. From the inside, it isn't. The system we were in was built on obedience, not suggestion, not interpretation. Obediencia. And when you've lived inside that long enough, you don't just break it, even when everything tells you you should. Especially then. Paulus asked it. That's important. He didn't ignore it. He didn't pretend. He asked for permission to break out. He knew what the numbers meant. He knew what was coming. He knew exactly what staying would cost. And still. At to ask. Because that's how it worked. And the answer came back. No. Not wait. Not wait. Not prepare. No. Hold the city. Hold the position. Relief is coming. Tosse words. They sound different when you know the reality behind them. Relief wasn't coming. Not in the way we needed. Not in the time we had. Not at all. But the system didn't change. Because the decision wasn't being made where we were. It was being made somewhere far away. Somewhere warm. Somewhere where the cold didn't exist. Where hunger wasn't immediate. Where the map still looked clean. Where everything still made sense. And when decisions are made from there, they don't feel the same. They don't carry the same weight. Because the consequences aren't visible. Not in real time. Not in human form. Lines. Positions. Numbers. And we were those numbers. That's the part that stays with you. Not the explosions. Not the fighting. The distance. The distance between the decision and the people it affects. Because in that distance, things get distorted. Reality gets delayed. And sometimes it gets ignored completely. Then came the air supply that was supposed to fix everything. We heard it before we saw it. Engines in the sky, low, struggling. But you look up, and for a moment, you believe it. That maybe this is the turning point. That maybe this is where things shift. But then you see how little arrives, how inconsistent it is, how much never makes it. And slowly, that belief fades. Not all at once, just enough to understand this won't save us. Not like this, not even close. The numbers were simple. Too simple. We needed hundreds of tons. We were getting a fraction on good days. There weren't many good days, and the ones that came weren't enough to change anything, just enough to keep us going a little longer. And that's when it becomes clear. You're not being sustained. You're being extended. That's a different thing. Completely different. And once you understand that, everything changes again. Because now, it's not about survival. It's about time. How much is left? How long it can continue? And what happens when it runs out? If you've made it this far, stay with me. Because what happened next is where everything finally breaks. Not the lines, not the positions, the people. The people, that's when Munstein came. Or, at least, that's when we heard he was coming. Relief force, movement from the south. A chance, not a guarantee, but something. And in a situation like that, something is enough. Hope, return. Dangerous hope, the kind that makes you believe again, even when you shouldn't. We could hear it. Distant, faint, but real. Artillery! Closer than before. For a moment, it felt possible. Like the war hadn't completely turned, like there was still a way out. And there was. And there was, for a brief window. There was. There was. All it required was movement from both sides. Them pushing in. US pushing out. A corredor. Narrow, brutal, but real. Enough to save men. Not the army, but the men. And that should have been enough. It should have been. But, again, the order didn't come. Paulus waited, asketh again, and again. Nothing, or worse, the same answer. Hold. Hold. Wait. Relief is coming. You don't forget that moment. When you realize, it's not that they don't know. It's that they've chosen. Chosen to keep it the way it is. Chosen not to change. Chosen not to act. And in that choice, everything ends. Not instantly, not dramatically, but permanently. Because once that window closes, it doesn't open again. And we all felt it. At the same time, like something slipping away. That wouldn't come back. And it didn't. Munstein got close. Closer than anyone expected. Close enough that we could hear it. Close enough that it almost mattered. And then he had to pull back. Because without us moving, there was nothing he could do. And just like that, the last chance disappeared. No announcement. No explanation. Just, gone. And after that, everything became slower. Heavier. Final, because now we weren't waiting for rescue anymore. We were waiting for the end. And if you think that's where it stops, it's not, because what came after that wasn't defeat. It was something much harder to endure. After that, something changes in a way that no report will ever capture. Not the situation, not the positions. The people. Because once the last chance disappears, once you understand there's no breakout, no rescue, no reversal, you stop waiting. And when soldiers stop waiting, the war becomes something else entirely. The days that followed didn't feel like combat anymore. They felt like erosion. Slow, constant, unstoppable. Men weren't falling in battle as much as they were fading. You could see it in the way they moved. Slower. Heavier. Like every step required a decision. Like even standing upright had become a task. Hunger had taken over everything by then. Not sharp hunger. Not the kind that makes you restless. Te opposite. Dull. Constant. A presence that never leaves. That sits behind your thoughts. Behind your movements. Behind your ability to think clearly. You stop planning. You stop imagining anything beyond the next hour. Because your body doesn't allow it. I remember one moment clearly. A man sitting next to me. Staring at nothing, holding a piece of food so small it barely existed. He didn't eat it right away. He just looked at it, like he was trying to decide if eating it now was worth it, or if saving it for later might somehow matter. That's what it does to you. It changes how you think. Not strategically, not rationally. Instinctively, everything becomes immediate. Everything becomes now. And in that state, orders lose meaning, because the body doesn't respond to them the same way anymore. The cold made it worse. Be thin. It wasn't something you reacted to. It was something you lived inside. It was always there, in your hands, in your feet. In your feet, in your breath. Men didn't complain about it anymore. They, just endured, Italiano, or didente. Frostbite spread quietly. Not dramatic, not loud. Not loud. Whose and damage. Slow, permanent, and often unnoticed until it was too late. I saw men lose fingers without reacting. Not because they didn't care, because they didn't feel it anymore. That's when you realize something is very wrong. Not just physically, mentally. Mentally, because pain is a signal, and when the signal disappears, so does something else. The medical posts, if you could call them that, they weren't places of recovery anymore. They were places of waiting. Doctors worked without sleep, without supplies, without anything close to what they needed. You'd see them move from one man to another, doing what they could, knowing it wasn't enough, and still doing it, because stopping wasn't an option, even when the outcome didn't change. And that's the pattern. Everything continueth, even when it stopped making sense, even when it stopped working, even when everyone involved knew exactly where it was going. That's what this became. Not a failure. A continuation of something already broken. By January, there was no illusion left. None. The lines had collapsed inward. Positions had been abandoned. Not by choice. Be necessity. There weren't enough men to hold them. Not enough strength. Not enough anything. Units that once had thousands were now dozens. So many times less. And still. The structure remained. Names, ranks, orders, all of it still in place. Like a shell. Empty, but still standing. That's when the silence changed. Before, it was absence. Now, it was acceptance. No more questions, no more speculation, just understanding. This is how it ends. Not soothingly, not dramatically, but like this. And that's when something else happens. Something very quiet. Men stop thinking about the war. They stop thinking about victory, about defeat, about strategy. They start thinking about home. Not in a hopeful way. Not like they're going back. Just and remembering. Fragments, voices, pluses. Things that have nothing to do with where they are. Because the mind goes there when the present becomes too heavy to hold. I saw men write letters they knew would never be sent. Carefully, slowly, as if the act itself mattered more than the destination. And maybe it did. Because it gave structure to something that no longer had any. And in that moment, you understand something no one explains. War doesn't just take lives. It takes time. It takes identity. It takes everything that made a person who they were and replaces it with something else. Something simpler. Something harder. Something that only exists to continue until it can't. Then came the final pressure. Not sudden, not explosive. Systematic. Operation Ring. We didn't know the name. We didn't need to. We could feel it. Every direction, closing in. Every position shrinking. Every movement more restricted than the last. There was no maneuver left. No flexibility. No space. Just compression, like something tightening with no release. The fighting didn't stop, but it changed. It became closer, more immediate, more personal, because there was nowhere else to go. No fallback. No secondary line. Whose error? And when that happens, every moment matters more, because there's nothing behind it. The end came without ceremony. No final speech. No announcement. Hooths uncollapse. One position at a time. One group at a time. Until there was nothing left to hold. And then the message came. Not loud. Not loud. Not dramatic. Whose and clear. Se hace. Se hace. That word doesn't feel like you think it would. Not relief. Not victory. Just absence. Because when everything has been stripped away, there's nothing left to react with. Paulus made his decision. He surrendered. Not because he didn't understand what it meant. Because he did. Completely. Completely. And that's what makes it real. Because, at that point, it wasn't about orders anymore. It was about choosing what remained. Life, or continuation of something already over. And hechos. That choice. It carried weight. Not just for him. For everyone. Because it marked the end. Not of the war, but of that moment. Of that place. Of everything that had been building toward it. Numbers. You can read them anywhere. Hundreds of thousands encircled. Most never leaving. Those who did. Facing something else entirely. Captivity. Distance. Time that stretched in a different way. And many of them never returned. But numbers don't tell you what it felt like. They don't tell you what it means to wait for an order that never comes. To follow instructions that no longer serve a purpose. To realize slowly that the decision has already been made. And that you are inside it. That's what stays. Not the battle. Not the movement. That realization. That moment when everything becomes clear and nothing changes. Because that's the truth most people never see. Wars aren't always lost in a single moment. Sometimes they're lost long before anyone admits it. Lost in decisions that feel small at the time. Lost in silence. Lost in the distance between those who decide and those who pay. And by the time it becomes visible, by the time it reaches the men on the ground, it's already too late. That's what Stalingrad was. Not just a battle. A point where everything that had been building finally revealed itself. And for the men inside it, there was no way out. Only through. And for most of them, not even that. If this story made you see war differently, subscribe now. Because what really happens behind these decisions is rarely told the way it should be. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from?